Good evening, everyone, and we apologize for the delay. We had some technical difficulties, so it's 6:20, and I'm going to call the Committee of the Whole budget meeting to order. Um, we have regrets tonight from Mayor Zabian Clerksnare, so other than that, we have quorum. Approval of the agenda, because it's a special meeting for our budget. The agenda will be accepted as presented. Does anyone have any declaration of conflict of interest? Seeing none, I'll move on to announcements. I have a couple. West Hants Regional Municipality is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship signed in 1726. West Hants Regional Municipality recognizes we are all treaty people and have responsibilities to this land and each other. West Hants Regional Municipality also recognizes African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched the part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. And council, as chair, I'm committed to ensuring this meeting and its participants conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner as outlined in the municipality's Municipal Code of Conduct. Meeting presenters, staff, and the public are expected to conduct themselves in an equally respectful manner at all times the meeting is being conducted. I thank you all in advance for your commitment to these important meeting principles. Does anyone have any other announcements? Seeing none, I think we're on meeting 6 for our budget deliberations. We've had some great conversations and some direction given. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Rashawn to just give a review of where we are and where we're going to go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight we are on, as our chair has said, meeting 6. So I'll be doing a review of the decisions made in May 28th and where we're currently at. So we get a refresher before we go into council direction. I know we've gotten a few emails. Again, try and answer some of those questions towards the end. But first, I'm just going to hand the floor over to our CAO, kind of start the process off, how we're going to tackle tonight.
Okay, thanks, Carly. So council, yes, thank you. Meeting number 6, and it really doesn't matter how many meetings you have, as long as you're feeling it's progressive and you're moving towards your goal. I think we are down to what we might call our final strokes with respect to accuracy. Arguably, every time you look at a budget, especially something this size and scale, you're going to find something that's a bit more accurate, especially as year end approaches from the previous year. But they're not usually things that will drastically influence a tax rate in an up and coming year. So we're still interested in that. Carly, you're going to present the different scenarios that council had requested, give folks an update. I still urge you to focus on, operating and capital. Just think of the sewer and water. They are essentially paying for themselves. So when you think of those two significant service deliveries, those are paid for by the ratepayers. So we're kind of getting down to the final strokes here now with respect to the tax rate. And of course, that's been the challenge to date. And Carly's going to give us some scenarios. We've had some capital work that we continue to kind of revisit the building. And I think probably, Madam Chair, you have given folks a lot of latitude, and I think that's a healthy thing to do with respect to the adding or removal of items. I don't know that we've had any formal motions of council. If I need to be corrected, please correct me. So there's a little bit of latitude that kind of goes with that. The Public Works facility seems to be one. I think that's been resurfacing since the last meeting. So we could discuss that and how, if it is the wishes of council to kind of bring that thing back, how it might look and not have a negative impact on the tax rate in this year, but it will be coming if it's delayed and it's something council wants to bring back. So I know from our perspective, again, we're trying to think about the operating budget, how it affects the taxes, and then when you look at those capital projects, those that have the heavier debt financing, those are really the things that affect the tax rate. And not to favor some projects over the others, but some that are funded by CCBF or maybe even other external sources, those are things that are not going to affect the tax rate. So perhaps, Madam Chair, if we're revisiting some of those items, we might be able to kind of say worthy, maybe equally important or less important or more important, but it's not affecting the tax rate. So maybe we can kind of park that one. But I know as the chair, you have to try to kind of filter some of these comments. So maybe as folks are asking questions, we can compartmentalize that way, and we might be able to give you a quick response as to whether that helps us or not with respect to trying to get the 25-26 budget approved. Finally, as things delay, just so sometimes people ask these questions, well, what do you do when you don't have an approved budget? We do exactly what we did last year and no more. So that's kind of the process in the municipal world when you are working in an environment where you don't have an approved budget. So if there's something new scheduled, we wait. If there's anything new, we wait. But for the most part, everything else, we just kind of carry on. And then, of course, it's not that time of year with snow removal, some of those peaks and valleys that we kind of have. So there's a little bit of latitude with respect to time and not impacting the service delivery. So we still have a little bit of time before we start to get into that stuff. Although I know if Kathy were here, she'd say, what about community development? They want to get going. And I know Public Works is heavy into the capital side. They want to get going with respect to projects and so forth. So these weren't words of pressure. They were words to give you space and time. But if we can, we do need to try to focus, if can, on some of those items that impact 25-26. And we can help you as the topics come up. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Perfect.
All right, I'll just share my screen and we'll get into the presentation here. All right, so following up from our May 28th meeting, we had budget adjustments. So within that meeting, again, just review, these were all removed prior to the release of the budget. Then the operating budget was adjusted. So what you're seeing before you right now is an updated version of what we reviewed the other night. As Mark had indicated, there is always accuracy adjustments that happen as between meetings as we get more information, but there was also some changes that were made. So I updated this list. So some of the bigger changes that were made was around the Public Works outside facility that was removed. So that has been included in this number with the adjustments there to reserves. And then in addition to that, the other things you'll see updated in the handouts, which we'll review here in a little bit, is the splash pad was added back in. You'll also see that the Windsor Station 4 tanker 4, there's 36,000 that was in there for the repairs to their tanker 4. So that is what you're going to see change-wise. So again, we'll jump into the actual handout here in a second, but overall, this is the net change from the expenses. And if we look at the overall, again, you're seeing a little bit of change in reserves. So we've increased the reserves because we reduced the transfers from reserves. We've reduced the debt, again, through multiple years. And I do have a slide on debt here in a little bit. We also had made numerous changes throughout regarding the accuracy adjustments, which we talked about. So again, we talked about those at the last one, so I won't go over them again. And there was no changes in the revenue other than the changes that were a result of removing the Public Works outside operational facility. So within the debt servicing in the current year, you'll see this is what the current year is now looking like. Within that, you'll see this year we have the outside operational facility that has now been completely removed instead of 50%, which we'll be talking about here later. Again, just a reminder of what a penny is worth, and we're currently sitting at 4 cents for residential, for West Hants with no change to Hantsport or Windsor and no change to the commercial rates. Within the 6-year rate comparison, we are currently sitting 2 cents below the pre-consolidation rate for West Hants. And I'm just going to enlarge that so folks can see it. So again, just reviewing Hantsport, where it was 1.66, we're now at 1.3537. And with Windsor, we were once at 1.88 and now we're at 1.6464. Again, we're reviewing our low and highs because that hasn't changed. We have the $31 on the low side, $315 in the high side. When it comes to assessment changes, assuming the 1.5%. Reviewing our capital. So with the operational facility coming out and the repair work to pumper tanker 4 going in and the splash pad coming out, we're seeing a net change in the capital budget of $9,759,349. Again, those are the only changes from the list we reviewed the other evening. Updated percentages, of course, the biggest changes. We have community development now sitting at 7% with the splash pad back in. We have the public works now sitting at 16%. That didn't update. Okay, that one's didn't update. My apologies. That's now much lower. And we have the where's the other one? Protective services increased slightly due to the 36, but not more than 3%. All right, so going into the reserve budget. So again, we had some changes in here. We have the Canada Community Building Fund decrease that was formerly presented. Now it was removed because of the 450,000. So now there's only a 25,000 decrease in that spend. And we also have the changes to and from reserves within that for the 21,000 that we changed within the draw from the previous meeting. We also have the increased draw on the capital reserves of the 36,000 for the pumper tanker 4 repairs. Are there any questions about where we're currently sitting? I'm going to open up the document again. Again, I've highlighted all the changes since the document you received on the 28th. And we're open. I know we kind of going to get into some of the questions that were talked about in the emails. But I just wanted to pause here before we get into any of the scenarios or those questions.
Perfect. Thank you. I see it late. Counselor Paul Morton.
Through you, currently the HFD upgrades to the engine 12. We put that back in and took out the other things that made the same amount of money.
Yep.
But it's still on this paper.
I might have missed updating it. My apologies.
Any other questions on any of this before we move on? Counselor Ivy.
Thank you, Chair. Just gonna carefully pull this over.
Counselor.
The one question, we don't have those updated numbers at this point, Carly, right? Like we don't have what you've just shown us on the screen.
Yep. You should have a printed copy of the handout that was given at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay. We've got this one.
Yeah. Should be a legal size one that was left at each.
Oh, sorry, it is.
spot?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's it. Okay, so that's okay, thank you. But not the same slide that you had up there with the change in the value of the penny and that, right? We don't have that.
No, that's a result of all the changes.
That's the result of the change.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we can carry on. Director Sean.
Okay. So again, we received, and I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. We received a number of emails. Again, a lot of talk around different themes. So I've just kind of summarized it. I know there was some other questions. So if I don't reference your question specifically, it's either because it may not have impacts on the current budget or taxes, or it may not have a theme. If I miss something, please ask the question. We'll try and handle it. Biggest themes were there was the splash pad was mentioned again, the Public Works operational facility. So both of those two items were talked about being readdressed. The splash pad doesn't have any impact on the taxes. It does have an impact on the draw from reserves. And the operational facility was removed. It wasn't delayed. So that's something that we may want to consider. Again, adding back, and if we add it back, do we debt service it in full, or do we debt service it in part, or do we delay debt servicing by a year? Because we've done that before with a fire truck as well, but it's something that we can talk about. There's 3 different scenarios there. The other questions were around landfills, land purchases, divesting of properties, and various other things that kind of came up around that. But the biggest focus, Madam Chair, was the Public Works facility.
Yeah. So at this time, council, is there anything you want to discuss? I guess is what Director Rashawn's asking. So some of the things that were in the emails, they're not going to have an impact on our operating budget. So as suggested, I think we stick to the things. We got to get a budget passed. So I think those are conversations that we can have after we have an operating budget. It's not going to have any impact. So, but I'm at your will. So, Carly's present where we're at with the budget she has. We're at 4 cents. And I'm just looking to see if there's any direction from any of the information that was put in the emails. So that's where we're at right now. Councillor Ivy.
Thank you, Chair. Even though they're separate and distinct, there's still the cross impacts that take place. So what I'd like to know, Director O'Shawn, if I missed it when you were speaking, but so we're down now at 4 cents on the west-hand side, but what's our reliance still on the reserves in holding that rate at 4 cents, and what we're seeing up there for the infrastructure as it relates to both Windsor and Hansport? I saw the numbers going through, but where are we at, given all that we've cut out and all we've done to get to that point, that there's still a 4 cent West Hants impact and that we're still using reserves? So just.
Yep. So currently we're drawing 697,000
on West Hants, and the number for Windsor and Hansport.
Not.
We're not drawing.
No, we're contributing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess the follow up on that would be, and I know that, we want to get through this budget first, but we still have significant work to do in the coming year in order to find ourselves in here with a budget that's going to be comparable in some fashion to what we have presently, in order to alleviate that same pressure off the reserves a year from now. Is that an accurate assessment of what we have in front of us?
Yeah, and I think that's been a challenge since consolidation, because we have been utilizing reserves. So again, we've been slowly getting it down, but it is something that we'll have to eventually talk about how we're going to mitigate that.
Absolutely, because if we weren't doing that mitigation, the impact on the rate would be significant. And it appears primarily for West Hants, less so for Windsor and Hansport. Am I accurate with that?
Yes. So if we think about what a penny's worth, a penny in West Hants is 171,000. So 697 is almost 700. So
Another
we're-
3 cents,
yeah, about 4 or 5 cents. Yeah.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's 4. Yeah.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, it's just to get on an order of magnitude where we're at, still using the reserves and what it would be to have them eliminated and what that cost is. Because we paired a lot of things out this year, a lot of things out of the expense budget. I think we could pulled over $1 million, and it's where we weren't. So it's over $1 million pulled out of the expense budgets, which were determined to have been of value to the organization to basically have them deferred for another year. So thank you.
Councillor Remy. Sorry, she had her light on, so I'm just taking names. So I'll do Councillor Remy, then Councillor McLean.
Just a quick question, just for clarification. Through you, Chair. I was just curious. I do want to discuss a public works building, but you're saying we're dealing with operations only, so this is not the time to deal with that?
No,
to
it
have these
is.
discussions?
It technically is. I think what Director Rashawn, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, was saying is there's the opportunity to not have it impact the debt servicing this year, that it can be delayed or put off until it's not going to be operational probably this year, built. So Director Rashawn, if you have anything else to say, I think operating budget at this time, it's not going to impact.
Yeah, I gave basically three scenarios. If council wants to add it in, then we could debt service it next year. And I think it was around 358,000. We could do half, which is what we had kind of presented earlier, which was about 179,000, or we could put it all in this year at 358,000. So I kind of gave those three debt servicing scenarios for you guys to decide if you were putting it back in.
All right, so I guess, because, sorry, through you, Chair, but at the last meeting, it was decided to remove it from the budget. I did send an email, but I'm just going to say it here because emails don't really count. But yeah, I have reasons the Public Works crew is very kind and let me pop in very last minute on Friday on my way to work. So I appreciated that, just as a kind of reminder of, what we saw on the tour and what they were making do with there. So I just want to make a few points before we make the decision, though, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
So I did highlight there's a few regulatory requirements that from my research, so somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I found that is not following, and right down to it's like OH&S or occupational safety guidelines, occupational health and safety, and labor standards. The whole 2 toilets for workplaces with 10 to 26 staff, and it's either 17 or 19 full-time staff there. So they have one indoor toilet and the other is a porta potty that's outside. Obviously, sorry, didn't need to add that. There's improper ventilation in the lunchroom and the offices where they're located. The change facilities, again, outside. And there is only one for all of those people, which has a picnic table in the middle because they don't have enough room in their lunchroom to fit everybody. Yeah, and then there's the cleaning the equipment outside, which I believe the new facility allows them to clean it inside. I'm not going to speak to the specs of the new facility because I didn't write that part down. But yeah, I guess my biggest thing, we've been talking about accessibility and diversity and inclusion and all of those things around here and how important it is to all of us. I was quite surprised. I don't know. I guess I was taken back a little bit. I'll be honest with you. And I'm sure this isn't the intention, so forgive me, but it was just, I found it very strange. I understand it's all men who work in that facility. So gives a little more freedom on, no, that's not appropriate to say, but you can go behind a building. I'm just going to leave it at that. But that doesn't make it really easy for women. And I find that it's very limiting to any woman or anybody else who wanted to share that space. It kind of limits who is going to be working with us in that team. Anyway, like I say, I have some stuff I can add more information on the regulations that I found, but I just wanted to add that. And I really think that this is not a want, but a need, and something that we've been telling them that we've been going to do for a while.
Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Director Rashawn. Did you mention the what a penny's worth? Is it 196,000 or 171?
On the West Hands rates is 171,000.
Where is it worth 196? What rate is that?
That's the general
Well,
rate.
that's the general rate. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Larry Pinch.
So I was just going to follow up to Councillor Remy's comments here in her email that she previously circulated to us. So I think when we were discussing this at the previous meeting, myself and perhaps another councillor or two had thought that there was going to be like a third option. So I didn't vote for the first two options because I thought we were going to do a third option, which was to do it, but also to try to find some grant funding or consolidate some of our other space to help reduce the costs of our infrastructure and therefore be able to continue with the public works building. And I don't think that's any fault of anybody. I think that was perhaps my misunderstanding that there was going to be a third option. But that would have been the option that I went with so, to move forwards with the public works building while actively working on consolidating our infrastructure and looking for opportunities to receive funds either towards that particular build or towards refitting the other building, perhaps if that's the direction that we choose for offices, because I know that that paper circulated by Councillor Morton did have like a green refit on it as far as grant options and loan options go. So I would be favorable to continue with the process, whether that be putting half in the budget this year or delaying the debt servicing until next budget. But given the OH&S standards and the current setup that is there for staff, I just think that we need to show them support by creating an environment that is conducive to a healthy workspace.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bob Morton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I won't reiterate everything they said because they literally bullet point by bullet point knocked off what I want to say. So that's great. Other than the fact that I would say next year, I would like to see debt servicing put off till next year. Half is great. All next year would be better for me. But I would love to see it continue for the reasons you just simply heard, and I won't repeat them, but certainly would like to see it go.
Okay. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Ivy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I guess just to say, the points that have been raised are very well said. And I think we've known for a period of time that there's been challenges there within that building, as I had said last week, having been in a tour there 4 years ago, or even maybe 4 years before that, that it's obvious that the facility could use some work. And more than that, thus we have the package in front of us. I think it was a year ago when we gave the permission to proceed with a design component of this. And I didn't go back to check the minutes, but it occurs to me that it was probably about this time a year ago. So the bit of the surprise for me on this, I guess a couple of things. One is that we found ourselves with a budget this year that was as tight as it was. And to be reminded or to determine that there was substantial reserves funding our tax rate. In two different fashions across the municipality. So we've got that, which I lost sight of, to be honest with you. But that it's come in at $5 million and we don't know what we're tendering aside from public works facility. And coming in at $5 million, we have no idea what that's designed to look like. I'm not wanting to speak against this. I'm not, because it's clear that there's a requirement for a change to take place there, but have no idea at that price what that's looking like. The only comparison I can provide, and it's not for any other reason other than that when we looked at renovations to King Street, if that were to be the chosen location, that those were estimated to be at about 3. And that was 4-5 years ago when that quote was done as part of that work. So that's the concern that I have with this, is that where we're at financially. And I certainly would not want to see additional debt servicing done this year, and deferring and delaying doesn't do anything but push into whatever the percentage of inflation is going to be with any kind of a project like that. But that's where my mind is at in trying to sort out. So the extent of what we're building for, and two, the change, which again, somebody tell me if I'm wrong on this, but aside from discussion that we'd heard when doing the most recent tour, that it was going to be more than just public works, that we would have other areas of staff included there. And I only put that in the context of the conversations that we've had as it relates to the office facilities and what was intended to be done with those. And I think the words were to get everybody underneath one roof. So there's a bit of a contrast there for me. And there's my uncertainty that sits around that. It's not that we don't need it. It absolutely should be accessible and open to everybody, and everybody should be comfortable working there. No question. But I just want to have a better sense as to what it is that we're bidding on to have come back. So we don't start a tender process and then sit here with sticker shock if it's changed or if it comes in at what we're seeing it at. I think that's an important part of the conversation.
Thank you, Counselor Ivy. Any Counselor Bonnie Smith?
Through your chair, I did circulate an email. I had asked Director Richard for some clarification and on some questions that I had about it. The concerns around the washrooms and the lunchroom are big concerns, especially the washrooms. But one of the ones for me that was a concern was the inadequate ventilation. They drive those big trucks in there with exhaust, and they might only be running for a minute or two while they get them inside before they shut them off to work on them, but then turn them back on. And these guys are working in there. Yes, it is all guys working in there, breathing in that exhaust. Like that, there's no adequate ventilation. It needs to be. I'm in support of it, whether it's half the way we had it a little while ago or a few meetings ago where we had half of the debt servicing over this year, that would be fine. But I do think we need it, and I would definitely be in support of it right now.
Counselor Larry Pinch?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I just have two questions. The intent for this building is that it would theoretically be more gender diverse as far as staff go if the community development offices were located there, would be my presumption. And then my second question would be, if that is the intent and we receive the design, to Councillor Ivy's point, did the previous council not see the design? I guess my understanding was that the previous council had requested that or approved that design went forwards and that you guys had seen the resultant report that came. No.
No, I don't believe so. Maybe it would be at this time, instead of us assuming Director Richard, can you tell us where we are at with the design? Because I think there's some questions whether there's offices in it or if it's just strictly a public works building for public works and community development.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yes, so we're at 100% design. We have full tender documents. We are ready to tender this building. I do have some printouts. There's a bunch of just marks on here to give you an idea of size and scale, if that's something you'd like to see, or I can share the full tender package with you also, full breakdown, mechanical, electrical, how many bays, but it encompasses many offices. Currently now we have 3 offices. The new building will house 13 offices. So for combined, we'll probably keep the old offices just for spares. So we'll have a combined office space of 16. So that will go from current of 3 to 16. Lockers were mentioned. We don't have lockers for everyone now, so people share lockers. So I think we're about 18 lockers. New proposed is 35 lockers. So essentially we thought, maybe some students in the warmer months in that space. So we'd have a combined locker space of 55. Staff, again, that was briefly mentioned. Previous to consolidation, we had 9 to 10 staff working out of that facility. Now we have 10 full-time staff day to day, along with another 20 some, on a part-time basis in and out, partial day, starting their day there or ending their day. Combined, we'll have an area for 47 potential staff in the new building. Just on the combined space, I briefly discussed it last time. Potential from King Street Public Works Operations, not including myself. There's 8 to 10 people that could be transferred to the new operations building, freeing up a fair bit of space wherever that is in the new municipal complex. And that is Public Works and community development. There'll probably be another 2. So essentially 10 staff from the current office at King Street could be transferred potentially to the new ops complex. And it's not just a, Public Works building. It is combined community development, public works space, not just offices, but also bays. There'll be 8 bays in this new building.
So, and one dedicated bay will be for community development. And we do have a wash bay, so the trucks are able to come into a separate bay, all enclosed, waterproof walls, and be able to wash the trucks, apply salt inhibitor, again, for maintenance and proactive, and that can be done, through the winter. We can actually wash vehicles outside now, so sometimes they're washing vehicles inside. And again, with remarks, we don't have a vehicle extraction system. So even when the trucks are rolling through there, we do have ventilation, but it's, being brought across the building. So the folks in there, not only working in that, they're eating, they're changing, they're in that space with improper ventilation. And just finally, the washrooms, yes, 2 washrooms. We did previously, a couple of years ago, had a female staff. Certainly we didn't encourage it, but she felt she just used the porta potty because she wasn't comfortable with using the other space. So that certainly wasn't, we didn't feel good with that type of thing. So our staff have been very accommodating, very patient. So it's full design, ready to go. And certainly it's not a want. It's a past due need, critical need. So thank you.
Great. Is there any questions? Councillor Larry Pence.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Director Richard. So does that design include ventilation, much like we would see in fire halls?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
You nailed it. Vehicle extraction system. So before the truck comes in, you would hook an exhaust to them. So they carry it in, and then so no fumes and totally, improved air circulation within that building, along with the offices would be separated. So they wouldn't get fumes into the offices or the change or lunchroom.
Any other questions? Seeing no lights, I do have one, and then I don't know, CAO, maybe this is for you. With discussion we've been speaking about, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here. With these 2 complexes, it was to get staff all in one building. I didn't realize the Public Works was going to have offices. I thought it was just a Public Works building. So I'm just wondering the scope of that and where that's coming from.
So I think you're talking about your supervisors, your managers will say about side services. So with a drop in names, your facility person, your Parks and Rec superintendent who has a office here, I assume those types of folks. I'm not sure where the programming side will say, whether there's any community development programming or people that are not associated with the outside world. Is that fair to say, Todd? Like you have your managers and those folks, they have spaces now throughout the municipality, but they'd be consolidated under one roof. So if your question is how many subtractions does that make from the admin side of things, I'm not sure that we flush that out, but Public Works probably has a little better handle on that from an operational point of view. And Todd said we have a capacity of 16. So yeah, so it's more work that has to be done, but yes, administratively, there are challenges with having people in 2 different spaces. Yeah, administratively. Some of those folks that live in that outside world too, right? Yeah.
So either building, and that's for another conversation because that's not really going to impact our operating budget, but it's been said that King Street could house everybody. So this will just give us extra capacity with offices in the Public Works.
I think it would have a positive effect on the eventual consolidation of a space, which may make this space look a bit more appetizing when we get to that discussion with council, because one of the limiting factors here was housing everyone with the outside community development world living here. They have their bay and we'll say 25% of the building, basically 25% of the ground level. So with those folks vacating physically, with all their stuff, there's probably one person in that count. I think you're probably thinking about the superintendent. But yeah, it makes both options look a little different. We have parking and other considerations that go along with all that. But in theory, the more people you put in that building, the less demand it will have, yes, on our eventual admin.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, councils? Councillor Ivey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I guess to that point, that's I think is the key point. We're looking at a new build of one building, and the information that we were waiting to come back on the other two properties was to look at what the best option was financially from the standpoint of renovate one, sell the other, look at if there was any rental opportunities in the market, or two, to look at a new build. Those were the three parameters that council had given direction on that we're waiting on. So the reason that I'm, I sure as heck don't want to be the one who's speaking about the needs to have these staff in a better facility than what they're in at the present time. Don't want to see any delay in that, anything whatsoever. But I just think that we have a need to know what the coordination looks like on those two facilities, because we're talking about a brand new build at 5 million estimated at the present time, and two other facilities that we have. And I, if it's only me that thinks that way, and that kind of we want to have a sense of it, so be it. But I'm just saying that that's where I'm coming from when I'm talking about this, that we should be looking at facilities standpoint on this whole picture here for what we're looking at. This isn't something we're looking to build for the next 5 years. It's next 20 to 40 years of this operation, well beyond probably after our time here with this organization is done. So that's why I'm wanting to just highlight that it's more than 5 million, and it's if we add this one and we don't do anything with these other two, then we've got 3 or more, actually, if we look at everything that we've got. Again, you take it for what it's worth, but we need to see a coordinated effort on this somehow. It's in my mind.
Counselor John Smith.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I agree. We have too many buildings. We have to get rid of some, or we have to repurpose some. We also have the fire department in 100 King Street. I'm not sure if they stay or if they go, and they may need a home too. So that complicates the issue. We also are going to inherit an empty courthouse. Doesn't have a use. So there's another building that we own that is in the mix. So I would like to see an overall plan before I make any decisions on building new buildings, simply because we are pressed for taxes and we just can't make any mistakes on this.
Thank you. Counselor McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Smith, John Smith, he took my words. Anyway, I got to echo his comments and Councillor Ivy's. And I'm in no way against a new outside facility. It's just we have too many buildings at the present time, and I sent that email out today, just looking for some answers, like cost wise and where we're going to go. Are we going to, get rid of a building, consolidate, build a new one, like for public sport or municipal complex? That's where I'm at. Thanks.
Counselor Larry Pinch.
Thank you. I guess, is there a way that we receive a report like that as far as where all the buildings are, what they can accommodate, what the suggestion is, which I know is not going to come before a budget needs to be decided, but that we hold a space for moving, having the potential without having to wait until next budget deliberations to move the public works building forwards once we receive the information that Councillor Ivy, Smith, and McLean are looking for? Is that an option?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, one of the options would be to put the project in, but not debt service it this year, just knowing that there would be a conversation next year because we'd have the debt servicing in next year. So we'd have to plan for that if it was approved after the capital budget was approved.
And I guess my next question, if I can have
Yes.
2, so through you, Chair, to the CEO. Maybe so, because I'm not trying to make it sound simple, but what is it that holds us back from making a decision on consolidating a building or picking a location, or acquiring the information to be able to make that decision as council? Is there something that makes the process extended?
So we have a significant amount of work that we've done on both buildings and assessments. So I think it really is just dedicating some time with this council to do that. But I'm going to ask you to focus, because even if you made a decision today, you're not likely to get away from the cost of either of those two buildings. So it's going to take some time to transition, whether it's some minor capital improvements to allow us to get through on one of the two buildings, or to build something new. It doesn't really matter. Within this fiscal year, you're going to have the cost of 100 King Street and 76 Morton Drive. So we can keep going there, Madam Chair, but it's not going to help you with the tax rate.
May I respond?
You certainly can. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I didn't think it was going to. I'm just was hoping it would help the conversation, because it seems like we're perhaps with some who would really like to see the public works building in the budget,
Yeah.
some who are concerned about having multiple complexes. And so therefore their decision might be based perhaps on whether those things could be moved within the next 24 months or not, if we could make a decision. So I was just,
Yeah.
looking for clarification. So it basically is that council's will to have a discussion because the information already exists to inform our discussion.
Yes, depending on where this council is, but yes, I feel there's a significant amount of work has been completed to answer physical and or financial questions associated with one building or the other, including an appraisal of buildings. Should they be sold or put on the market? We have all that information. Madam Chair, with respect to this building, we assure council, even if you approve it and debt service it next year, nobody's moving ahead with this thing until you folks can have another look at it. So I know Councillor Ivy has expressed in the past that once something hits a budget, then it's a green light to go. Yes, there is some truth to that. We proceed and we move forward. But if you have a project that you'd like to emphasize the importance of it, put it in the budget, and recognize that the expense of it's coming next year, but you'd like to make sure you know what's in it, then you can tell us that. Put it in the budget, delay it, do not do a thing until council sees another full report on this thing. Boom. Allows you to move ahead with the progress of your budgets, and you're understanding how you're financing it, but you're not making any final decision. This operation can't spend any more than $100,000. It has to come back to you folks. So assure you, even if you approve it, there's still some work and review that we can put in front of you before we proceed. So yeah, so you can make modifications and understand fully what's there. So that's an option, Madam Chair. Put it in the budget, delay it, and workshop it before something goes out to tender as an effort to try to move it along.
Director Richard, do you?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. So if I could, just on the discussion around, municipal complex combined with the public works ops, this building, regardless of the municipal administration building, this needs to go forward. I don't think we want to combine a municipal administration building with their public works garage with salt domes and snow plows and gravel sites and stockpiling of pipes and manholes. This building it's not really an addition, it's a replacement. We're trying to capitalize on the existing structure to utilize that for many things, possibly cold storage, heavy mechanical maintenance, dirty maintenance, where the loud stuff happens. We've looked at combining this. This is what staff does. We plan for the future. This is a once in a generational ops building. The last one is 50 years old. This is not going to come back for another 50 to 60 to 70 years. This is built to be future proofed. So delaying it because of a municipal administration building, have a hard time with that. This is certainly needed to delay that. Certainly doesn't resonate well for me. So this is new. This is the offices. There certainly is a shed dormer. We try to capitalize space. We certainly didn't add offices just for adding offices. We capitalized on the mechanical room. It's in a mezzanine. It's on the second floor for some of the mezzanines. We capitalized on every square inch of this space to try to keep this building. One is we only have so much space. in that parcel of land. And the second is, we knew budget was a constraint. It's a steel frame building, certainly not elaborate. It's just to meet the needs that we're currently surpassing. So thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Any other comments, counselors? Counselor McLean?
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is a question to the CAO. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if we were to go through and build this new outside operations facility with the increased office space and moving staff down there, would one of these current municipal complexes, could we actually move staff into one or the other, whichever councils decide, with not spending a lot of money on renovations?
Okay, so there's a couple things in there. You're not putting me on the spot, but there's a couple things in there. So if the office space in the new building increases, the same question, are we reducing the office count that these two buildings? I'm gonna say yes. I don't know exactly who's moving into those, but yes, it would reduce the need for office space. Right now, we had a plan, and it was sized and scaled to modernization. These numbers haven't been kicked around since 2019. And I think 5 million was tossed on the table, 4.5 was on the table. This was kind of an all-in retrofit of 76 Morrison Drive or 100 King Street. That could be pared down, right? Depending on whether it's a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, or a 50-year plan for the administrative offices. It was a far more encompassing scenario, pre-consolidation, which I would say would be a full reno of either of those places. That's where those numbers were kicked around. Either space is fairly equal in square footage, about 16,000 square feet of, we'll say, space that could be renovated. This building is 8,000 per level, including where community development has their operation, their outside operation, 25% of the building. 100 King Street, admin as we know it, not including any bit of fire, just coincidentally is also around 16,000 square feet. So even with a slight reduction or students coming and going, I think either space has the capacity, either building has the capacity to accommodate what we would call our administrative needs. You're always going to have a core financial need and planning department needs with those folks. They're not going to move around a whole lot. That's where some of Todd's middle managers and or Kathy's can arguably be in an administrative setting or a public works setting. So we're probably going to win a little bit through his new offices, but I don't think it's going to be a significant reduction in the square area needed that either spaces can't accommodate.
Okay, yep, thanks.
Anything else? So Counselor Ivy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it wasn't my intention when speaking earlier to suggest that we'd see a combination of the admin with the Public Works building. That wasn't what I was putting out there to talk about here. It was about the fact that we've had one in waiting for a while. We've got this other one, and there seems to be a shift in people. Having pulled up the report that we'd received last June, community development was referenced in the report as involvement with the facility. So my apologies for not recalling that as part of it, but there's a line in here that talks to that during the quotation for the design component of it. So, but I just want to be clear that that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that we've got what was positioned as a facility that, again, those words of everybody under one roof, clearly not getting Public Works and all the staff and all. That's not what was intended, I don't think, ever with that. So I just want to be clear about that, that's not what I was trying to suggest.
Okay. Any other comments? So council, I guess where we're at is, and Director Rashawn can correct me if I'm wrong, it's taken out of the budget right now. So if there's an appetite to debt service it when it's billed, not this year, not next year, and there's the appetite to see what the design looks like, and to make sure we direct CAO that nothing transpires until it comes back. Just because it's in the capital budget, it still has to go out to design and have costing come back. You still have to approve it, is what I'm hearing, I think, from Director Rashawn. That is one of the options.
So design's done.
Design's
So go to tender
Tender.
and then come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to our CAO's comment, yeah, we can bring back a report prior to releasing the tender, I think was the suggestion. I may have missed all of what he had suggested, but yes, there's 3 options. Put it back in, don't debt service it this year, debt service it by half, debt service it by full.
So I am at your suggestion. Counselor Bonnie Smith.
I would like to see it put back in with debt servicing at half, the way we had it before.
Half for this year? Half for this year.
Madam
Coun-
Chair, if I may suggest, could we do a show of hands maybe on who's in favor of each suggestion?
Yeah, I'm just writing them down. I was going to get to Counselor Bob Morton next in case he had a different
One
suggestion.
would be to do it when it's built, but we'll vote on that. If it doesn't pass, then go with my second suggestion.
Okay, so yours is to debt service when the year it's built.
Sorry.
Counselor Remy.
I just have a question through Chair. You may be able to answer this. If we put it off, then is there still the opportunity to apply for the grants and those types of things? Or is it like now that the RFP is done, then no more opportunities for grants?
The opportunity, I mean, typically, grants will say, don't start the work until you have your application submitted. That's a
Mhm.
generic statement. Some let you go retroactively, but most of them want you to have a submission before you start paying a bill associated with construction. So lots of time, I would suggest now, Director Richard had, implied around the probability of certain ones or not, but we'll continue to explore them. Absolutely. Every project, we do that.
So just a follow-up question then, just based on the financing of it, then does it make more sense? And I apologize, but I'm not sure what makes the most sense. So, I mean, I would love to say one thing, but if there's an opportunity for grants, do we put it in the budget and then say like, don't finance it until next year so that there's an opportunity for grants? Or I guess that's where I'm looking for like some clarification, like what is the best option so that we can apply for those grants?
So here's the thing. I'm only going to borrow whatever we need to borrow, and whatever we debt service, I take off that amount. So even let's say if we got 70%, I don't know, I'm pulling that number out of my air. We're still funding 30% via debt, and we're reducing that borrowing, but any debt servicing that we've already budgeted. So if we were to put it in, let's say by the whole amount, and we got 70%, the 358,000 is going to come off the amount we're going to go to the municipal finance division and say, hey, we want to borrow this. So it will result in lesser interest and less, a lower payment in the future periods. So does that kind of help? Like we can debt service it now, but any grants that we're awarded will just get taken off what amount we borrow.
Okay.
Director Rashan, Director.
Yeah, if I could, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah.
So just on grants, so we looked at with this building, actually using we have the sewage treatment plant right next to it. So we looked at possibly using that fluid to pipe it, to use it as the media for the heating system. We went down that road a bit, but there was a lot of unknowns, and one of them being what would be the effect on the lagoon operation. So we kind of set that aside, and also just, the capital cost would increase, like I talked about last week. When you look at green energy funding, there's the capital cost actually increases. The payback is long term, but you're reducing your carbon footprint. So one of the suggestions maybe for grant funding is to look at, possibly funding that study and also incorporating that through our headworks connection, because the other one we had to pipe the media through. We're looking at the headworks connection. We're going to have a large force main run right by the shop area. So again, with green funding, a great opportunity to look at what opportunities may be to reduce our heating costs for that facility and maybe others. So again, with the ops building, it's a maintenance garage. We have lots of roll-up doors. So the heat recovery for, to try to energy efficient that would be a fairly tall ask. Just that type of structure, steel building. And the design wasn't really for a LEED certified green energy building, but heating systems certainly may be an option for grant funding.
Through you, Chair. I just
No,
want to
no,
apologize because I know that there was some discussion at the last meeting. So I apologize for making you repeat that because as soon as you started talking, I remembered. So I am so sorry to the rest of council that completely slipped my mind.
No problem. Okay, so we have option one, which is to service half the debt this year. So that's putting it back in with half of the debt service. I'm seeing a nod of the head. So all those in favor for putting it back in and servicing half the debt this year, raise your hand. 3. Okay, next option was to put it in and had the debt servicing when it was completed. Is that Counselor Morton was what you're? Okay,
Put it off till next year.
next year. So
The debt servicing component of it, yes.
for next year. Okay, so this one is show of hands if we're gonna put it in and do debt servicing next year. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that passes. Counselor Ivy?
And I think we didn't buddy any of those up with the for the report to come back, but I think that's ultimately important. And I'll say that the reason for commenting on the fact that when we approve in the capital budget is because we're reminded historically have been and can say it, it's not a bit of truth. We're reminded on almost every capital project that comes to us that it was approved in the capital budget. Not a problem. That's, but just that's that's the expectation. So we do not approve until we see a tender coming back. So there's no nothing locked in that regard, but I think it's important to note that. So if we can see information come back on this, a more detailed report of the thinking around it, it certainly would help, I think.
So on that, just so for clarity, Counselor Ivy, would you like to see something come back maybe next regular committee of the whole, if Todd has, Director Richard has time of what it could, just an information report of what it looks like, the design, just generalize so we have it in front of us, or a more detailed in a couple months time, because they're gonna tender it. So we're not gonna have a tender back probably by next committee of the whole, but it's going to have to come back to council to be approved.
Yeah,
So just don't want to miss anything. So
no, I'm just saying as time permits for that we do see something that gives us a greater sense as to what's coming down the road, that we're not seeing everything at the same time. So the tender comes back at the same time as everything else. We should have some time to digest and take in. If it it cleared it. So it's going into the budget. And so they'll be taking this document out to tender, but I think it'd be just good to know what it is that we're.
sending out to tender.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Richard?
sure. I can share with all the council the tender documents. We'll show the drawings, show the tender specs. So yeah. I would ask that you don't share it publicly because it hasn't hit the tender procurement site yet. So certainly, but for council's awareness, and yeah, lots of pictures in there and drawings, and
If that's the easiest, I mean, it's what makes sense. We don't.
that would certainly be
We're
the
not-
easiest for me. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
hit.
So however that works, that can be done. I think that'd be
Okay.
helpful, and down into the nuts and bolts, that even for me, that's deeper than I want to go. So
No problem. Much appreciated. Yeah.
And like we said, it's like CAO repeated, it's not passed, it's not approved until it comes back to council anyway. So perfect. We've got that one off our list. So the other thing was the splash pad. I think it was in, it is in now. And it's the same thing. It doesn't impact the operating budget this year. It's just a project that's there. And the same thing, it will come back to us at another time. So I see 2 lights. Counselor Ivy, I'm not sure if you Counselor Bob Morton.
Thank you, Chair. Just curious if we know what the ongoing maintenance on the hand sport one costs. Like, is it minimal or? 'Cause know
I
it
don't
doesn't-
think we're there yet. It's just exploring it. So
No, just-
all of that will come back to us at the time. Right now, it's just a splash pad somewhere in Hants County. It's not impacting the operational budget. And a lot more detail will come back to council through committee of the whole before it proceeds anywhere.
I get that it doesn't affect that, but if it costs like 50 grand a year to maintenance Hansport, then that will affect it if we build it, kind of thing, right? So
Yeah.
it doesn't affect it to build, but it certainly does to maintain, I guess.
Yeah. So are we good just to leave that as is for now?
Madam Chair, if I
yeah.
may add to that response, typically when you're building a facility, you have to do some mock-up financials anyway. As it's just thinking back to when we did our last big build of our sports complex, we had to do mock financials of what we expected for ongoing maintenance even before we built it. So that would all be part of the consideration. But I think if I recall the direction, and I know Director Keogh's not here with us tonight, but I believe a site selection is the first step before we even get into operational and all of those other pieces, because depending on where it's located will also indicate or will influence what's required at those specific sites via water, all those different things.
Councillor Ivy,
Yeah, I think, so currently it's in or it's out?
it's in.
So currently it's in. So, and I think the comment may have been made already. I don't want to repeat it, but just the point being is that this is a Canadian Community Building Fund, so there's no impact on capital in that regard, but there is potentially impacts on operating. And prior motion of council was to have a report come back to determine if or what it wanted to proceed with it. And so that's where this one, a little bit different than the other one where we'd already approved a design work on the replacement of a facility that council fundamentally believed was a necessary thing to be done. This one, we haven't had the conversation aside from what we've talked about here that, so if it's not going to cost us anything, well, let's just put it in. But I don't agree with that. We should have the conversation to know that we're generally putting it in because we believe we're going to want to support it further beyond just using Canadian Community Building Fund money and knowing what it's going to cost to operate it, because it will affect next year's operating budget, which again, we're starting to move up already.
I'm at your will. Any other questions or comments? So as of now, it's in. We're all good? Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Bob Morton.
Probably the same idea before it's built. It'll come back to us anyway, so we can decide then. So.
Yeah. Okay, Director Rashawn.
All right. So we'll get into the last of the scenario, which is, again, I'll probably just speak to it a little bit. I am going to get it up here on the screen. So just give me 1 second. It's just taking a little while to open. Okay, a little longer than a while. Just get 1 second here. All right, just taking a minute to.
That's no problem.
Doing a little bit of a workaround, so we'll see if it opens. Perfect. All right. So in our previous session, Councillor Ivy had asked for a 3% scenario. And so I just quickly did this again based on last year's numbers. So we have the current 25-26 assessment roll, because the question was how much new revenue or new money that would make. Using the 24-25 area rates for the West Hants, Hantsport, and Windsor, I calculated 3% on the top. Adding those together, this was the generated revenue at 3%. This was the 24-25 required residential tax revenue. So with a 3% increase, if we look at it like this, we have 502, 729 is new revenue under the West Hants area rate using the 3% model, 30,966 using the 3% model over the last year. So if everything over the last year, and 257,218 in Windsor. So with that kind of generates our revenue there. We're looking at a little over 780, 90,000 right there in potentially new revenue just using the 3% model. Looking at what we have in the proposed, if we looked at the other, if we looked at the combined rate and did the 3% model, the actual West Hants rate would be combined lower than what we're proposing right now. So again, we would make enough in our tax revenue combined to support the expenses of the municipality. So that is where I landed with the 3% model, just using the area rate portion of the 3 areas, not the general rated portion. And then the other item was, again, what would 1 cent or 2 cents? I didn't do the calculation just based on the different areas, but knowing what, and I don't have headings here, so my apologies. We have the general rate, which is at 196. So for every penny we want to reduce the general rate, it's 196. So that would be what we'd have to reduce the general rate on. If we wanted to reduce it by 2 cents, it would be 393, 749.58. And so I did that calculation. So this line here represents 1 cent on general West Hants, Hantsport, and Windsor. And this represents 2 cents on general West Hants, Hantsport, and Windsor residential rates. So those were the scenarios basically that I was asked to kind of come back with. Again, I need direction from council on how we're going to fund these 2 areas. So if we wanted 2 cents, I need to know where we're taking that 342,000. Is it something that council wants to utilize more reserve funding? So again, going back to some of our previous conversations, doesn't sound like from our previous sessions that we want to utilize more reserves. Okay. So the next question we got to ask ourselves is, okay, do we want to reduce services? Again, through previous budget deliberations, we haven't gotten to where we've stated that we want to reduce services. Recreation was referenced. We looked at some of the public works costs. All of those were areas where we did not touch. We did reduce some of our other areas for accuracy purposes, but again, none of those areas were further touched. So I'm kind of in your hands now, council. Here's the scenarios. If we want to get down 2 more cents, we need to find 393,000, or under the West Hants rate, 342,000, which I will say is going to be a little bit trickier. And I'll say that because the West Hants area rate is 70% police. The 76 Morrison Drive building, the former CAO pensions, and the former debt. So again, a lot of those are fixed. We don't have a lot of wiggle room there. So one area where we do have wiggle room is the general rate. So if we want to impact the West Hants rate, then we're going to have to look at general rated items, or we're going to have to take from reserves. So there are my scenarios and my suggestions and my knowledge sharing with you folks, and I look forward to our discussions and direction before the break.
Okay, council. So there's the scenario. We're at 4 cents right now. So if you want to get 2 more cents off, we would need direction on 393 out of general or 342 over West Hants. And you heard some of the options, so I'm at your will. Seeing no lights. Counselor Ivy.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So on the general rate, Carly, if we were to look to pull it from there, what sort of a difference are you looking at? I'm not picking it up there, right? I'm not looking at it and missing it.
So if we wanted to go 2 cents, then we need 393,000 roughly. Again, knowing commercial is going to take a bit of that off.
$0.02 will get us 393. Is that what you're saying? Or I just
We need to find and remove 393 for 2 cents
out of general rated services.
out of generated services. Or we can utilize reserves. Again, the strategy is in your hands.
Or you can add 2 cents to the general rated services. Am I correct to say that?
Or we leave it as proposed, or we could add another 2 cents if we wanted. Yeah. And take the reserve reduction further down.
And that model still has, so would that model have us with Windsor and Hantsport seeing a 2 cent increase, but West Hants would be at 6? Can I say it that simply, or can you? Clear?
So if we wanted to increase Hantsport or Windsor, we would just increase the contribution to reserves. So yes, you could choose what cent increase you'd like in those areas.
And there's
If you
capacity.
wanted to do increase across the board.
And there's capacity to be able to do that.
To contribute to reserves
Reserves.
within if we were to increase the tax rate, yes.
Right. And I understand about the contributing to reserves now because I got it. So the question then becomes West Hants, whether it's to still use reserves or to adjust the rate further. Okay.
You're good.
Somebody else may want to weigh in.
I gonna go to Counselor Larry Pinch because she's had her lights on, then I'll go to Counselor McLean.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Director O'Shaw. So the general rate didn't budge in all of these presentation. It was just the West Hants area rate that, no.
No, the general rate did change. It's just each time it changed a little bit differently, and it impacts the West Hants rate. So it lowering the general portion of what the West Hants combined area pays. So that's why you're seeing still a 4 cent versus a 5 cent from last time.
Would that also have lowered though what Windsor and Hantsport were paying because it was the general rate?
Yes, it did. And we increased the reserve contribution to keep them the same.
Okay, so if we increase the general rate by 2 cents, would then the West Hants area rate go down by 2 cents? So they would be paying 4 cents more and the Windsor Hantsport would be 2 cents more?
No.
No.
So if we increase the general rate by 2 cents, all areas would be increasing by 2 cents.
Yes, apologies. Could we increase it by 2 cents and dump the West Hants area rate down by 2 cents? I know that that still gives you 4 cents in the end, but you would be getting some more contribution from Windsor and Hantsport, would you not? Which would slightly decrease the West Hants area rate some? If we're looking, I'm just trying to find 400.
It doesn't, the contributions to and from the area rates for Windsor and West Hants, or sorry, for Hantsport and Windsor, those contributions to reserve don't impact the general rate. Those are only area rated expenses. So when if we were to increase those two by 2 cents, we would, sorry, let me restart. I'm getting a little tongue tied. If we were to increase the general rate by 2 cents, we would have to reduce the contribution to the Windsor Infrastructure Reserve and the Hantsport Infrastructure Reserve to keep them at the same rate. but the West Hants would go up.
Okay. This might sound like just so I understand, why do we not want the Windsor and Hansport rates to go up? It seems like everything we do, we want to keep them the same. We're just going to change our contributions to reserves, but the West Hants area rate can go up.
So right now, the Hansport and Windsor rates could decrease, but we kept them the same by contributing to reserves.
Okay.
Counselor Scott McLean.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Director Rashawn. So at this point, we're still relying on $697,000 out of the West Hants Reserve. Okay, all right, thanks.
CAO.
I'll just put it into context. Do you have some historic numbers that we would have utilized from reserves to help offset a tax rate? There's different philosophies out there. You know, you're trying to smooth something over until assessments come online. You're trying to smooth out this thing that happens like this because of consolidation, because of general rating. Sometimes people see the utilization reserves as an immediate return of a surplus. And we've had the benefit of surpluses, especially in the RCMP world, which I think we are now utilizing.
Yes.
But sometimes the reserves are created by surpluses, sometimes. And the thought is that you're returning a portion of, or all of that thing. Some people say you overtaxed if you created a surplus. We know that's not always the case. You have windfalls on the expense side and the revenue side. So I was just, can you put it into context a little bit, Carly, our utilization of reserves in the past? And then I know we're looking towards a surplus this year. And I think Councillor Ivy asked that last time around. Of course, till all the dust settles and the books are closed, we don't know exactly where we stand, but there is an element of using reserves that is returning a surplus. And sometimes folks look at it that way. Whatever the windfall was last year, the taxpayer next year benefits from that because for whatever reason. And then some councils think differently, but that is an approach sometimes that we have taken and that you can take. It is a reserve by definition because it's a surplus, but you're taking it back out. So there's a reliance and there's a return. I'm not trying to confuse people here, but we have had a utilization, I think, since consolidation for a number of reasons, because we had surpluses or because we're trying to smooth this thing out.
To answer your question, just give me 2 seconds, okay? And then I'll get into it.
I'll go to Counselor John Smith while we're waiting for Carly.
Sure, this is just a question around reserves. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It was my understanding that the reserves were meant to offset the cost of buildings and capital investments, not to smooth out the tax rate. So you'd have a reserve for buildings or a reserve for vehicles or reserve for fire trucks or that sort of thing. Not to be used all of the time or every year, but to be put there, and that's what you finance the buildings and equipment from. So that you weren't impacting the tax rate so much.
Yep. But just a reserve is no different than your savings account at home, right? And when we have a surplus at the end of the year or a windfall, we have double equalization payments at some point since consolidation. Those are financial windfalls. You have to put it somewhere. So you put it in an operating or capital reserve. And then, yes, generally it gets dedicated and assigned to something. Equipment reserve for land purchase, elections, we have operating reserves. We try to build up those reserves because every 4 years we have an election. So there is that component in its pure sense. But sometimes, like at home, you are using your savings or your reserves to pay for day to day. The risk is relying on that too much, right? And when can you get away from that? This previous council talked about trying to get away from D transfer tax and the utilization of D transfer tax because it's not going to last forever. but it does keep hanging around at around $2 million. Well,
Don't
it's in the
jinx it.
budget. It is what it is, right? So there are those decisions you make, but yes, Councillor Smith, and its purest form, reserves should be protected for that reason. But there are, again, when they're generated sometimes because surplus is the RCMP, we generate about $500,000 surplus on RCMP services on an annual basis, primarily because of vacant bodies. So we allow that to build up over the first 2 or 3 years, and we said, this thing's not going away. Absenteeism is consistent. It's a windfall. Let's return that to the taxpayer because it's going to just keep building. Gas tax, when it was first introduced, it was to be used for new things and for it to go out when it comes in. But over time, as either municipalities didn't have a project or they didn't utilize it, the government allows it to accumulate and it goes into a reserve. But there would be some municipalities that would say that goes out the minute it comes in because that's what it's for. But every municipality has peaks and valleys and projects, right? So, and then here, I believe to this council's credit, you use it to fund, community groups and other groups like that, because, those are worthy things too. So I agree with you 100%, but there is this element of returning what may be a windfall of a surplus because we have to put it in reserve. Can't just sit out there. Yeah.
Director
Yep.
John, do you want to answer and then I'll go to.
Yeah, so I open up each year. So I'm just trying to get to the first one. So in the first year for West Hants, we utilized 265,000. I'm not going to read the full number, but just to kind of give you high level there. And then in 21, come on, did you open? This is, yeah, 21, 22. We have 295,000. I'm going to close these as I'm doing them so I don't get confused here. In 22, 23, we had 219,000. In 23, 24, we had nothing. In 24, 25, we had 1,180,000. And this year we started out with 1,125,000, and now we're down to 697.
Great. Counselor Larry Pinch.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Director O'Shaughnessy. So I guess we're following up. Where I'm trying to get to is the Windsor debts are going down, so their rate was going down, but we're keeping it the same to put extra in the reserves. The same thing can be said for Hantsport. Yet the West Hants area rate, which you said was made up of former debt, former CEO pensions, Morrison, and the RCMP 70%, just keeps going up. Why is our debt not going down the same as Windsor and Hantsport's is? I guess I'm trying to understand what it is that's causing the increase on the West Hants area rate in stark opposition to the other two area rates.
Because the West Hants area is bigger than the other two, so they feel the general rate more, changes in the general rate than the smaller areas, the smaller communities. So I know we chatted about this at our first and second meeting. So I know that was a little while ago, but it's because of what a penny's worth. So if we look at, for example, and I think at that time I used the example of the waste collection contract. So that was formerly area rated. Now we have one contract as well as EPR coming, EPR, yeah. So that's coming on, again, general rated revenue. So all of that got moved to the general rate. So if we think about what the Windsor waste collection is, we look at, and I'm just going to scroll here because I still broke it out by community just so that we could see it. So waste collection for Windsor is 380,000. If we think about what a penny's worth in Windsor, you're talking 25,000. So that has a big impact But when we look at West Hants, we see 1.4 million in waste coming off of the area rate going on to the general rate, same as the Windsor. But that 1.4 doesn't go as far with the 171,000 what a penny's worth. And then you put on a general rate at 196 or 197, I can't think of what it is, 196. You're going to be putting that on. So whatever that rate is, it still goes back on to the West Hants rate. So do you see do you see that connection there? So you're taking it off the West Hants rate, but it's not going to be as much of a variance between what the general rate can accomplish. So if we think back to the Windsor example, you have 380 coming off, which is worth 25,000 on the Windsor residential rate. You're putting that onto the general rate. The general rate is 196. It can accommodate that a lot more. Whereas you got the West Hants rate and the general rate are almost on par, about 20,000 difference. So whatever you're taking off the West Hants rate and putting on the general rate, they're going to feel it basically the same because they're not going to be reducing the West Hants rate as much. So they're going to feel the general rate increase more.
Yeah. So I understand your explanation, but so maybe, and this might just be my brain. Didn't you say though that the general rate went down, or were you? No, you were saying Windsor and Hantsports went down.
Windsor and Hantsports went
Okay.
down. Yeah. Hantsport had a debt come off, and Windsor has the bigger impact from the garbage being moved off, as well as their pension for their CAO changed.
So in the future, will that not mean that West Hants will always feel the greater impact of budget increases, that area rate for our residents than the rest of the? Okay. Thank you.
And I think we talked in previous budget meetings as well, like when we think about what consolidation was and what the former councils talked about, it wasn't necessarily to have everybody stay the same. It was to kind of also make everything kind of even. And what you're seeing is those rates are starting to even out a little bit as debts are coming off. Like we have, I think, the last debt with Hantsport coming off. So it's like they're going to start to balance. You're going to start to see as more things start to move to that general rate, everybody's going to be paying a little bit of the same as depending on what we area rate. But again, we also got to look at it as what is it worth to percentage wise funding. Like if you're paying more to live in Windsor, or you're paying more to live in Hantsport versus West Hants, depending on what services. But the flip side is you also got to look at the costs. It costs a lot more to service the West Hants area because it's bigger. More kilometers, larger waste collection, more recreational facilities, and all of those things that kind of build up. So you got to kind of think about that too when you're kind of explaining or looking at that balancing that we always talk about, because there's always going to be, if you take from one, it's always going to have an impact somewhere else.
Good on that one.
Yeah, sorry, I am.
No.
It's just, it is a hard, no matter which way you explain it, the weight of the financial burden will always lie within the West Hants residents more so than it will the Windsor or Hantsport. These are the phone calls I've been receiving, so I guess I'm trying to figure out how I am not justifying, but explaining that to our residents.
I always look at it as the general rate because that's what everybody's paying. So again, these are going to be things that are services for everybody. So everybody pays that general rate. So when I talk to somebody, it's like, well, did you compare what your West Hants rate was individually before this rate setting change? So the West Hants rate might have changed significantly. And I think if we look at, I don't have it up there anymore. So I apologize. Give me 1 second here. But the West Hants area rate last year was 27.5 cents. This year, and if I'm just going to quickly go here. Oh my gosh. 2 computers, just give me 1 sec. This year we're at 22.92 cents. So when you look at the actual area rate, it has gone down, and the general rate's increasing because we have more general rated services. Everybody's paying those.
Anything else? So we're still looking for direction if you are looking for 2 cents. Counselor Ivy.
Well, it was just on the prior conversation, even sitting around the table for this still gets to be complicated stuff because you've got money flowing in and you've got money flowing in when it's a surplus, as the CAO would said, going into reserves, and whether they were seen as windfalls or that tax rates came in better than you may have expected, more people moved in, all those things, de-transfer, where we saw the big movement take place over the last 4 years, coming in and putting money in there. And so it's not an easy concept. There's buckets of money, so to speak, and it's depending on where they turn down into it is the piece. In West Hants, no different than the comparison to Halifax, larger volume of people spread out over a larger area. And so the rate there is far less than what it is for Windsor and Hantsport, and probably always will be, if I can dare to make that as a general comment. I hope that's safe, but because even with that that balancing that's taking place, but that allows for that lower rate. So when you see a 1 cent on a dollar for West Hants and just rounding, it's 1%, but 1 cent on $1.64 for Windsor is less than 1% because our base number that we're starting with is so high. I asked the same question. When we first started meeting here 6 meetings ago, I was really quite curious and had to go digging to try and sort out what was going on. It comes down to how the money's being utilized within reserves. And I'll even complicate things a little bit now. I'd be sorry that I spoke, is that my position on this would be is that our reserves are lower than they should be. In other words, that we should be allocating more money into our reserves because of what we anticipate seeing next year. And that's why, for anybody, you may have seen me shift gear a little bit last week and even here today saying, what do we need to move that rate up to? Because we can't score all that capital required for what's in the 5-year budget here in a single year ever. And that's where I'm talking about trying to look at the bigger picture future, that we need to actually, and I really believe that we need to move that number. That's why I'm the note that was about everybody at 4 cents, or whether it's 5, 6, like trying to get to that simple way to get there, that we can still provide the same levels of service without going through with the machete the way we have. And I don't mean that to sound crude, but we really, when you look at the rediscussion we're having on some matters here and so on, I wish somebody else would say that they also think we're not geared up for the capital requirements that we've got coming in front of us, but better to start nipping away at those a bit now. So 10% becomes 15 on operating reserve, and whether that's the consolidated operating reserve, or I don't know that it's meant to be all of them, because there's requirements by policy for fire, for building, and other 3 or 4. They're listed in the spreadsheet we have, but there's those requirements, plus there's the general operating. The only one that we have to do is capital, I think, by MGA, and others can speak to that better than I can. But I just think that now is the time to start getting that nailed down. So if we're not clear on it, hopefully I haven't made it more complicated, but I think we need more.
Okay, any further comments, or are we good now with the 4 cents the way we're going? I'm looking for direction. Okay, seeing no lights. Counselor Ivy.
So if I could, through you, Chair, to the CAO or to Director O'Shawn. So you folks have greater control of these numbers than we do. You've got the spreadsheets. We've got PDFs and slides on the screen. Not so easy to work and run the numbers, but with what that we've got coming down the path by way of capital requirements, we've got a large item here that we have it in the budget with no debt to be incurred for the next 12 months, give or take, if it makes it through the Do you think we're in a good spot at 4 cents, or do you think that we actually should be looking at moving that number a few cents the other way? Like, how do we make sure that next year we're not having this same full-on discussion about where we're at and where we need to be to deal with that capital? Because Director O'Shawn, your charts show us that in 2 years, regardless of the projects we pick to do or not do, and I'll pick the real big one, Cunnable, that's only in there at 2 million now. We know the number is bigger than that, likely for a longer period of time and greater work. That what's a good step in the right direction to get us going down the path of getting those reserves geared up so we're not so reliant on debt in the future, because I don't see anything but debt coming at us if we just accept 4 cents right now. Sorry, it's not just 4 cents. It's significant. It's a change that isn't being spread elsewhere. But how do we balance that out?
Okay, CAO.
Do we have enough with a 4 cent increase to forecast our financial needs with the capital program that we forecasted? I think, that's a serious strategic discussion with council. I've seen very few 5-year capital budgets that look the same in year 2 and 3 when they become year 1 and 2. It's just like your house. You have a list of 20 things that want to be done and need to be done. And each year you make the decisions based on the financial capacity of your household. That is not necessarily good strategic planning, but that's the reality for most people and most households. And running a municipality is really not a whole lot different than that. I know I'm always concerned. We look at the 4-year capital that we should be making as many assumptions on grants and other funding sources. If it's $100 million, nobody's doing this project for $100 million without Paul's 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, or 50 cents. So we could and should be making those same assumptions, but we won't be doing those projects unless that funding is secured, right? That's just always how it happens. So I think strategically, Councillor Ivey, this council has given us a dive into what you heard on the campaign trail, but I think there's probably a deeper dive we need to take as a council to forecast the next 3, now 4 budgets, 4, now 3 budget cycles ahead of you. So I think 4 cents gets us through this year. I don't know that it gives us a lot of capacity on another $50 million capital budget, should it look like that next year. But I think that's the hard work that this council has to do in setting some of those priorities. And yes, we have one very large project that could influence the entire capital forecast of this municipality moving forward. So that's information you've yet to see. We've yet to see a final report, but the number's probably not getting any smaller. So I think 4 cents is enough from an operational point of view. I know it's challenging as council to increase tax rates, but I think you also look at what services you are providing. And I know staff can sit here and cost of insurance, cost of waste collection, those are all fixed costs that you've all experienced in your personal world, let alone here in the municipal world. We do have a tax base that will catch up, but the question is when? When does that assessment roll see that boom, right? And if we had a crystal ball, we did that a little bit, feels like about 3 years ago. We did that. We were forecasting apartment buildings and so forth. And Councillor Smith was asking, when are these things going to get built? Until they hit the assessment roll, it's not real money, right? So we just can't predict that. So 4 cents gets us by. I think it's a bit of a correction probably from a few years ago, when we reduced the tax rate, and we had some numerical things in that particular year that gave us some challenges, some budget accuracy pieces that we as staff took responsibility for, but we probably went a bit too far. So this is arguably a bit of a correction based on the past, but I think you're also, you have increased service levels across the board. You are doing things in rural West Hants and the former towns that you were not doing before. And those are hard things to visualize and put value on when you're facing a tax increase. Look at the fire services and how that has grown. Look at the recreation services, some of the rural recreation components that we're delivering now. So I think you can explain the cost of services. Nobody likes it, but you can explain the cost of services moving forward. So anyway, Councillor, I'm sorry, we're all grasping for words here now. I think 4 cents is adequate. More obviously gives us more capacity, but we don't know what a new infrastructure under new federal government looks like. There's all kinds of variables. We've got wind farms that might be coming online or not. Who knows? There's all of these variables that we're trying to forecast. But until they hit the assessment roll or until the check is written, we don't see those things. So that's it.
Thank you. Any final comments? So council, are we good with the budget in front of us? Seeing no lights, no suggestions. We have 4 cents. Last call for comments. Silence is Councillor Remy.
Sorry, through you, Chair, just for clarification, when we came in, it was 4 cents, but then we added back, never mind. I just,
Next year.
yep,
Next year.
Sorry.
So we haven't added anything in for this budget year and we haven't taken anything out. So we are at 4 cents. So I'm gonna go around the room. I'll start here and I see no lights. So Councillor Bob Morton, are you good with the 4 cents? Councillor Wheaton. Councillor McLean. No. Councillor Yanish. No. Councillor Ivy. Okay, so that's a no. Okay. You're good with 4? Councillor Smith? No. Sorry, 3. Councillor, yes. Councillor Larry Pinch? Do you have suggestions for 180,000?
Beautification. What is included in beautification? We didn't just go through beautification though.
Yeah, that might.
Yeah,
I-
so we did present what was in beautification. However, I can bring it up and look at it again.
Oh,
Just
geez.
as a reminder, the beautification in the capital budget does not impact the tax rates.
Okay.
It needs to be something in our.
I know.
operating budget,
I was-
yeah.
I don't have it all up in front of me, so I was trying to pull from my brain. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. Do you still need to know what's in beautification?
No.
Okay.
So we have 6. Put your hands up again. I just want to make sure I have everybody. It's because you all didn't speak. All good with 4 cents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm a no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're not. So
Okay.
put your hands up for okay for 4 cents. You're good for 4 cents. Put them way up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's 11 of us sitting here. So I don't see any other, so no suggestions. Councillor Larry Pinch.
I'm sure you've probably already looked at this, but like our insurances are all consolidated, so there's no way to make the insurance costs any cheaper at all.
Yeah. So last year we did an insurance RFP, and through that process we increased a lot of our deductibles to reduce the costs, and we're actually seeing a significant number of claims. So our insurance did go up this year, as I previously mentioned.
So council, I'll So I'll speak because I'm on the fence. I don't really like the 4 cents, but sitting here, I don't have a suggestion to get us to 3 cents or 2 cents. So, unless somebody else does that is in the same boat as I will say we'll go with the 4. I know there's some counselors here. It still has to be voted on. So I don't have any other option but to say, well, I will go with the 4 and then it's going to be a vote after that. I don't know where that will go. So, and that's just the way it is. So if no one else has anything else to offer, I will say 4, and then that puts us to go with 4, but it's still going to come back for a vote.
Yeah,
So-
no, it is your Madam Chair. That's
That's-
kind of where we're at right now. I have nothing to kind of update or change or no more accuracy adjustments. And I've been looking. I've been looking. In some cases, it's more of an accuracy adjustment in the other way, so it doesn't help. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. I gave a couple suggestions again, depending on where council wanted to go. We could utilize more reserves, or we could go back through again the exercise that we did a couple nights ago, which I don't feel will differ much of a result. However, I'm open to council suggestions. And again, that's the staff list of what we recommended. And then after that, it would be potentially services or items that impact the operating budget that we may want to look to change.
I see a light, so I'll go to Councillor Larry Pinch.
I think I already know the answer to this. Sorry through you, Chair,
No,
but I just wanted to double check. We removed like any additional green bids, so we like cut those costs. I had a resident reach out to me who was like, remove, and I had had a quick conversation with a staff member, but remove the compost for West Hants rural residents. That will save you money on the tax rate. Which I know is wrapped up into a contract and it's not a possibility, but I just thought we had a discussion the previous budget night that like we removed, there was extra monies in the budget for additional like green bins or replacements of green bins or something of that nature. And we had already removed that. Am I correct in that?
Yes and no. It wasn't removed. The amounts were left in, and there was a suggestion that that could be reduced. And I'm just going to pull up that. Trying to think what night that was. Oh, no, not that night. Yeah, I think that was left in, but I just got to find which night that happened. I think it happened on the 22nd. So I'm just going to quickly open my tables here. I don't believe it was a lot we were talking about when it comes to reducing green bins. And that would be again, the purchasing for inventory as well as replacement, if I recall, from Director Richard's comments that night. And yes. So under waste collection, the total amount of reduction for those 2 areas was 7,500. And those were not put forward. Yeah.
Okay, council. So we're at break time. I'm not sure how much time you need, or do we just want to have a 20-minute recess and then come back just to make sure everyone has everything at 8:30? Gives everyone time to rethink, relook. Does that seem fair to come back at 8:30 and maybe a step away from our spot and come back and find out where we are?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if that's the wishes of council, we can definitely do that. I do not have any direction. So as of right now, the only things that have to be changed are the budget motion and the taxing resolution.
Okay, so there is no direction. So does everyone just want to take a 20-minute or is somebody ready to give direction? Let's take the 20 minutes, okay? We'll come back at 8:30. So we got 15 minutes actually.
I will stay here, Madam Chair, just to answer any kind of questions that
That
may
would be
pop
great.
up. And then if we do come back and there is further direction, I may need a few minutes just to update
That's
my
not a
resolutions.
problem. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you. We'll be back in 15 minutes. It's 8:35 and we're back after our break. So we are looking for, we've reviewed the budget. So now we're looking for direction for Director Rashawn.
Yep, that's where we're at. I may, if I can go over a little bit of stuff, if council wants to just kind of refresh everybody, because it's been 6, like where we started, where we are now. Because if that's, or if there's any
At your
direction.
will, if anyone wants to have further discussion or direction for Director Rashawn. Counselor Ivy.
I think what she's suggesting is a good idea, just to do the
Yep.
short story on where we started and where we're at. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, no, that's what I'm asking. So we'll get the Coles Note version of 6 nights. No pressure.
Yeah, no worries. So again, it's not going to be very, again, long winded here, but I just thought it would be good to kind of chat and again, because it's been over 6 nights. So it's good for everybody watching too at home, because if they're tuning in just now, we're talking about, we're at 4 cents, but they may not have watched the first one when we, or looked at the document that was originally circulated. So, we started this process with 10-cent proposed increase. We got it down after the 3rd meeting down to 7.5. From there, we got it down to 5. And from there, we got it down to 4. So it was just kind of that process I was hoping to highlight because, when we started this process, there was this, again, 10-cent increase proposed in the West Hants area. We brought forward in our first presentation 9 cents, just due to a couple accuracy things that we presented as prior to. And then we were able to, through deliberations and direction of council, reduce it again to 7.5. That was in our 3rd night. Our 4th night, we received direction to reduce it down to the 5 cents. And then through the 5th night, we received the direction to reduce it down to the 4 cents. And what was presented here this evening with the document that is circulated is the cumulative effort that we have been put forward over the last 5 nights towards this budget. And we are here before you now looking for recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Director Rashawn. So that's where we're at. So we are now looking for approval of this 4 cents.
The motion is prepared.
I'm still waiting if there was any last minute direction, and then I can prepare the motions pretty quick.
Yeah.
Wait.
So Counselor Morton.
So I'm gonna say if we can sit here all night and not do a thing, which I'm not going to do, I'll just get up and leave, is if we got no suggestions on how to get it down below 4 cents, bring on the stuff and we'll vote on it.
Okay, so we're all good. So Director Rashawn, if you just need whatever time to prepare what you have, and then we'll have the motions read.
Yep, I did some preliminary work, so it shouldn't take very long, Madam Chair. I would hope no longer than 15 minutes.
Okay, and we're not going to break. We do have something else we can discuss. I don't think we need you here for that. So I'm going to ask for, it has something to do with budget. So I'm going to ask Director Richard to come up and you can work on your stuff while we do this one, if that's good. Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we found out late last week that we were successful in obtaining provincial funding. This funding program is called the Trunks and Roots Program. So previous to 1995, the province would own, maintain, and pave trunk routes. So trunks would be like Main Street in Hansport, King Street in Windsor, O'Brien Street, King Street and Water Street. So those were trunks, again, responsible by the province. After 1995, they, within towns, the province turned over the responsibility of those streets to the municipalities. They did do one round of funding at that time, but then ever since 1995, we're responsible for those trunks and routes. So they brought it back this year to cost share, a list. They asked for our list. So we submitted a list, I think sometime in February. Main Street in Hansport was one, O'Brien Street was one, and we phased King Street depending on our capital improvement plan. And we also put in for Water Street. Water Street was a priority because it was at the top of the list for paving. The infrastructure on the section on Water Street between King Street to just past Albert Street is in fairly good shape. Water main was replaced in the late 90s. So that actually came back with the province, applicable for funding and approved. So it's 50-cent dollars. They're cost sharing 50-50. So what staff is proposing, the J-class roads program, unfortunately, limited budget from the provincial side this year. So none of our list was approved this year. They said we can resubmit next year. So we're proposing to use that line item under the J-class road programs, essentially change the description to trunks and routes, and it will allow us to pave Water Street from King Street to Albert Street under this program. So we're estimating about half of the funding. It's about a $500,000 project to pave. We'll have to do a curb reveal, some planing, patching, and then so we're anticipating 250,000 from the municipality, and we'll receive approximately that amount from the province. So just looking for, your direction, Chair, that the council's okay with reallocating that funding from the J-class roads program to the trunks and routes funding program.
Any questions for Director Richard? Councillor Paul Morton.
Any chance of federal funding on this too?
Nothing I'm aware of federally, no.
Councillor Larry Pinch.
Thank you, through you, Chair. You said it was about $1 million project, but then I heard 250,000. So I just want to clarify numbers.
So initially, the estimate is about 410,000. That's for the full project. Now, contingency is not built in there, and net tax is not built in there. So our request is to allow a contingency, 250,000 our share, because we'll have to cover any extras over the allocation of the split between 400 and 6. So it's just the request of 250,000. And then talking to Director Rochon, the other portion that we won't use in J-class will come off the capital budget, but that's through the provincial funding anyway. So won't have any effect on the tax rate. That may be questioned. So
Okay.
No effect.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Councillor Ivy.
Thank you, Chair. That was really clear in my throat. So when's the timing of the paving on this? Through you, Chair, to Director Richard. Timing on this is to be
this construction season, this fiscal year. So it would have to be done this construction season. And it's a 5-year program. So there's other streets, that we'll put back on the list for trunks and routes, and hopefully we're successful in others in future years.
So J-class is already in the budget. We didn't remove that. Is that correct?
Correct. So we just found out, we confirmed today that there's, our list. We weren't successful in any J-class roads funding from the province. So we have that utilized, that funding stream in the capital budget of 500,000. We're anticipating using approximately 250 of that. So essentially just a description in the line item from J-class roads to trunks and routes.
And you don't anticipate any operational costs associated with this that would affect the tax rate?
No.
No. But timing, I guess, is to be able to get into this year's construction season.
Yes, we're thinking late fall. Water Street is a busy street. to get that done. There's certain patios out on Water Street that most likely will have to be, moved. So we're thinking, October-ish, once those patios are removed, so we can do the full curb to curb reveal and pave that whole section of Water Street.
Right. I guess my concern would go to construction season being pretty much booked at this point in time. We've run into this before, this late in the season, trying to get bids and get bids that are reasonable relative to the work that needs to be done is what my concern would be.
It's a great question through you, Madam Chair. So we can utilize our standing offer. So we don't have to tender this project. I confirmed that today with the provincial officials. Because that was a competitive process for a standing offer. So it would just be our existing contractor come in and give us an updated estimate to have that done under this program.
Thank you.
Any other, Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Chair, through to Director Richard. So the infrastructure underneath the Water Street, is it all like good to go, like water, sewer?
Yes, the water main was replaced. We did a condition assessment of the sewer. It's in very good shape. There will be some, we'll exercise some valves to make sure we don't have to do any services or valve repairs. So we'll want all those done before we do that. But that'll give us some time to get in there and do some more inspections. Anything that has to take place underground, more or less we could do that in-house, prepare for the fall paving.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Now, just, do you need a motion or anything from us to CAO for the money to be transferred from J class to trunks and routes, or just direction?
Yeah.
How would you like to
Yeah,
proceed?
just the value to begin with. The value is in excess of $100,000. So yes, now maybe if there's a will here, we'll see where council goes with committee of the whole, which is now.
Yeah.
We call them a special council meeting. As soon as you adjourn this meeting to formalize that process, and then I could sign it. They're looking for confirmation now. Again, the province has their priorities. They're trying to set stuff up, so it is what it is. So they're looking for a quick confirmation. Again, J class, not this year. Use those funds to support this project.
Okay, so Councillor Ivy.
Yeah, just one last question if I could. Given what we've experienced with the storm flow and so on, is there any opportunity here for any remediation that may be required related to Water Street? We've seen different times when there's been the stormwater backing up on the street, like same thing with manhole covers and the like. Is that intended to be part of this process, or is that, can you just touch on that so that we don't dig this street up and then determine as part of the planning with the consultants that we need to do more than what we have in front of us? Can you comment on that, please?
Sure. Great question. Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, certainly we did look at that. It's be a much bigger job. So not saying that, certain areas, may have to be dug up in future once the Cannibal Creek, progress if it does get to that point on Water Street. Catch basins may have to be enlarged, connected to a separate system. But we think, having this street, it is in need of repair. So, there may be some areas that would have to be, cut and then patched back in. Certainly a part of the Cannibal Creek program, because essentially Cannibal Creek needs to go, if it's down through Stannis Street, across through there, that would be an open trench. So there would be some modifications with Cannibal Creek, but to do all those things now, not knowing the grade, size and scale, it would delay, getting the capitalize on this 50 cent dollars. So we did look at that. There will be certainly there'll have to be some modifications down the road, but the infrastructure as it exists now is in good condition. So it's not like we're having to replace the water mains or the sewer mains. The separation of the storm system, because there is no separate storm, that would have to go in afterwards.
And I guess the only other question relates to the fall events that take place down there, Garlic Festival and the like, as to whether the timing for being able to inform those folks that they can, I guess, be ready. I know that they're more on garish than water, but all in all, it's in that same intersection of depending on what and where the work is, should this go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And once things are done, it's probably not going to be a long duration to do this. The curb reveal could happen and then, the paving could take place afterwards. So they could probably pave that section within a couple days. So, but certainly we'll look at those festivals and certainly we wouldn't want to do it during those windows. So we'll identify those.
Great. So do we want to make a motion now and then we can have call a special council meeting directly after this committee of the whole to have it read again? Is everyone in agreement with that? So a motion as to utilize a 250K of the J-class roads to fund routes and trunks from Water Street King to Albert Street, something similar to that.
For 25, 26.
25, 26.
Program that is the deputy mayor. Yeah, so we. maybe
Roots
use
and
the word
trunks.
Rededication.
Rededication.
Somewhere's in there, rededication of funding.
So would someone like to make that motion?
Let me take a stab at it. Looking to rededicate the J-class roads funding for $250,000 for the provincial trunks and routes program for $250 for Albert Street. What's the other streets?
Water Street from King to Albert
From King to Albert,
for 25, 26.
25, 26.
Made by Counselor Morton, seconded by Counselor Larry Pinch. Are you good with that, Clerk Snare? Okay. We can clean it up for council, for special council right after. All those in favor, raise your hands, please. Motion passed. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we just have, we're just waiting for Director Rashawn. So do you want us to break for a few minutes? 5 minutes? Okay. So we can break for 5 minutes and we'll just come back up, Clerk Snare. So Welcome back to our budget deliberations for our special committee of the whole. So we're back and I do believe Director Rashawn has some motions for us. So we will go into that mode. Director Rashawn.
Excellent. So I'm going to start with the budget motions first,
Okay.
and then we'll move into the resolutions. There is quite a few.
Mhm.
So I will just share my screen here, and then we can get these going. Okay. Yeah. All right.
So we don't have our clickers, so we'll be voting by hand. So I just ask everyone once, leave your hands up till Clerk Snare and I have a count, so we know. So I just ask for us, we'll take that slow. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so following council's direction, we have presented over the last 6 nights. And before you is a motion to approve the budgets based on the presentations made. You'll see various dates listed within the next few slides, just based on when we completed or compiled them. And I have in here as well a note based on the conversation before break regarding the change in the title and the 250 in the capital budget. So I've already made a note on that. So you'll see that reflected in the approved budget coming forward, that's posted online. Okay, I'll hand the floor over to you, Madam Chair.
Great. So we have we're going to have a lot. I'm actually once happy to sit in this chair because I think the last 9 years I've probably read them myself. So Counselor Larry Pinch.
That council approve the 2025 to 2026 operating budget as presented to Committee of the Whole on June 2nd, 2025, outlining total general rated expenses and transfers of $16,953,619. Total area rated expenses and transfers for the community of West Hants of $4,646,980. Total area rated expenses and transfers from the community of Hantsport, $634,408. And total area rated expenses and transfers for the community of Windsor, $4,120,970.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Do we want the nays recorded? So just give us a second because we're doing it by hand. So now we'll put the nays. Counselor Ivy, Counselor John Smith, Counselor McLean, and Counselor Yanish. Continue on.
That council approve the 2025 to 2026 West Hants Regional Water Utility Budget as presented to Committee of the Whole on May 12th, 2025.
Made by Counselor
Second.
Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I saw a hand go up. So we have 10, 1 nay, Counselor Ivy. We're good? Okay.
That council approve the 2025-2026 capital budget as presented to Committee of the Whole on June 2nd, 2025.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded
Second.
by Paul Morton. All those in favor, hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion's passed.
That council approve the 2025-2026 reserve budget as presented to Committee of the Whole on June 2nd, 2025.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion passed. All those nays. Counselor Smith, Counselor Ivy, Counselor McLean, and Counselor Yanish. Okay.
All right, so the next slide is again referencing our tax exemptions. So below are just the changes that we had in this current year. So we had the Falmouth Family Park Society as a new addition to Schedule B. We had the Harvest House Community Outreach Center as a new addition to Schedule A, and we had Mermaid Theater of Nova Scotia Society moved one of their ANNs or properties from Schedule C to Schedule A. And we also had the West Hants Historical Society move from Schedule C to Schedule A. There was no other changes within that, and I'll bring that up as part of our resolutions, but I thought I would open the floor if there's any questions on the tax exemption lists. Again, everything else remains the same. This is just highlighting all the changes.
Any questions, counselors? We've had this list now in the last few nights that we met, so. Seeing none.
Okay, I'll bring up the resolution when we get to that part, Madam Chair. All right, the next motion before you is for Avon River Heritage Museum.
Committee of the Whole recommends that council approves entering into a 3-year funding agreement with the Avon River Heritage Museum to support ongoing operations beginning in 2025 to 2026, including similar terms of other funding agreements. Further, that this funding be set at $25,000 plus an adjustment for cost of living.
Second.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor McLean. All hands in favor? Motion carried.
That Committee of the Whole recommends that council approves entering into a 3-year funding agreement with the Avon Community Farmers Market to support ongoing operations beginning in 2025 to 2026, including similar terms of other funding agreements. Further, that this funding be set at $5,000 plus an adjustment for cost of living.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor, raise your hands. Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, and that's the last of our funding agreement motion. So we are now ready to move into our resolutions. So just got to switch screens because I got to bring up
No
documents
problem.
here.
Yeah.
Motions. Let's start with some of the shorter ones. All right. Thank you, Your Worship. So before you is the tax exemption resolution, and I'm going to try and make it just a little bit bigger here.
There's a motion there.
Be it resolved that Schedules A, B, and C of the annual tax exemption property listing for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be approved as presented.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor
Second.
Paul Wheaton. All those in favor, raise your hands. Motion carried. Thank you.
Okay. All right. This is this.
Motion, Counselor Paul Wheaton.
Resolve that council support the area rate for Hantsport Memorial Community Center in the following amounts. Residential, 0.0603 per $100 of taxable assessment, and commercial at 0.3498 per $100 of taxable assessment, for a combined total of $112,321 for fiscal year April 1st, 2025 to March 31st, 2026.
Made by Counselor Paul Wheaton, seconded by Counselor Larry Pinch. All those in favor? Motion carried. There's lots to come and some of them are a little longer, so. see if
I'm
you can
doing
figure
the
them-
long one next.
Oh, there you go. You're brave, Counselor Reed. I know, I know what's coming, so that's why I'm all smiles.
A little flare up.
Yeah, there you go.
Be it resolved that the sums that are required for the lawful purposes of the West Hants Regional Municipality for the year 2025 to 2026, after crediting the probable revenue from all sources other than the general rates for the year and making the allowance for the abatement and losses that may occur in the collection of taxes and taxes for current year that may not be collected or collectible, is $16,953,619. And this council hereby authorizes the levying and collection of a general tax rate of 98 cents per $100 of the assessed value of commercial property and the assessed value of residential property and general resource property that will equal 7831 cents, 0.7831 per $100 of the assessment on residential and general resource property. Be it further resolved that the sums that are required for the lawful purposes of the community of West Hants for the year 2025-2026, after crediting the probable revenue from all sources other than the area rates for the year and making the allowance for the abatement and losses that may occur in the collection of taxes and taxes for the current year that may not be collected or collectible, is, there's a couple extra commas in there, isn't there? For $4,646,980, and this council hereby authorizes the levying and collection of an area rate tax of 80 cents, 0.80 per $100 of the assessed value of commercial property and the assessed value of residential property and general resource property that will equal 2292 cents, 0.2292 per $100 of the assessment on residential and general resource property. Be it further resolved that the sums that are required for the lawful purpose of the community of Hantsport for the year 25-26, after crediting the probably revenue from all sources other than the area rates for the year and making the allowance for the abatement and losses that may occur in the collection of taxes and taxes for the current year that may not be collected or collectible, is $634,408. And this council hereby authorizes the levying and collection of an area rate tax of $2.70, 2.77 per $100 of the assessed value of commercial property and the assessed value of residential property and general resource property that will equal 5706 cents, 0.5706 per $100 of the assessment on residential and general resource property. Be it further resolved that the sums that are required for the lawful purposes of the community of Windsor for the year 25-26, after crediting the probable revenue from all sources other than the area rates for the year and making the allowance for the abatement and losses that may occur in the collection of taxes and taxes for the current year that may not be collected or collectible, is $4,120,970. And this council hereby authorizes the levying and collection of an area rates tax of $2.87, 2.87 per $100 of the assessed value of commercial property and the assessed value of residential property and general resource property that will equal 8633 cents, 0.8633 per $100 of the assessment on residential and general resource property. Be it further resolved that the taxpayers in the said municipality are required to pay the whole of their taxes on or before the first day of September, AD 2025, provided that if the total amount of taxes owing is not paid in full on or before the first day of September, AD 2025, the balance of current and prior year's taxes then owing will bear interest at a rate of 15% per annum. Such rates to be calculated monthly at the end of each month at a rate of 1.25% until the sums are paid. Tax due date is September 1st, 2025.
Made by Counselor Wheaton,
Second.
seconded by Counselor Larry Pinch. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion carried. Nays, raise your hand. Ivy, Smith, McLean, and Yanish. Move on to the next one.
Our next few resolutions are our associations. So I'm just going to bring them all up so that we can go through them. We have 6 and they're all very similar, but a little different. Each one has their own, a little bit of difference in there. So
Counselor Larry Pinch, you're on deck.
I am when they appear.
We'll be there momentarily.
Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 81 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the West Hants Regional Municipality authorizes the levying and collection for purposes of private road maintenance, a uniform charge of $652.80 inclusive of HST per member for the year ending March 31st, 2026, for a total collection of $133,024.32, and such amount collected less $5 per lot administration fee plus HST less shall be forwarded to the Chalet Hamlet Property Owners Association.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 81 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the West Hants Regional Municipality authorizes the levying and collection for purposes of private road maintenance, a uniform charge of $250 each for 22 developed lot and $100 each for 13 undeveloped lot for the year ending March 31st, 2026, for total collection of $6,800, and such amount collected less $5 per lot administration fee plus HST shall be forwarded to the Innes Lane Road Association.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch. Seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 81 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the West Hants Regional Municipality authorizes the levying and collection for purposes of private road maintenance, a uniform charge of $530.73 inclusive of HST per member for the year ending March 31st, 2026, for a total collection of $69,525.63, and such amount collected less $5 per lot administration fee plus HST less shall be forwarded to the Chateau Village Property Owners Association.
Second.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor Paul Morton. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Thanks, Carly. Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 81 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the West Hants Regional Municipality authorizes the levying and collection for purposes of private road maintenance, a uniform charge of $445 plus HST, each for 122 developed lot for the year ending March 31st, 2026, for total collection of $61,890.60, and such amount collected less $5 per lot administration fee plus HST shall be forwarded to the Falls Lake West Owners Association.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Paul Wheaton. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 81 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the West Hants Regional Municipality authorizes the levying and collection for purposes of private road maintenance, a uniform charge of $62.60 each for 10 properties before the bridge on Canoe Lake Cove Road, and $250.18 each for 34 properties beyond the bridge on the same road for the year ending March 31st, 2026, for a total collection of $9,132.12, and such amount collected less $5 per lot administration fee plus HST shall be forwarded to the North Canoe Lake Cottage Owners Association.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by Counselor Paul Wheaton. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Be it resolved that pursuant to Section 81 of the Municipal Government Act, the Council of the West Hants Regional Municipality authorizes the levying and collection for purposes of private road maintenance, a uniform charge of $105 per share based on an undeveloped lot, $420 per share based on a developed lot, and $210 per share based on a seasonal dwelling lot for the year ending March 31st, 2026, for a total collection of $4,515, and such amount collected less $5 per lot administration fee plus HST shall be forwarded to the Blomidon View Residents Association.
Made by Counselor Larry Pinch, seconded by
Second.
Counselor Paul Wheaton. All those in favor? Motion carried.
That should be the end of all of our motions and resolutions. Yeah.
Perfect. So we're all done? I thought,
That used to be that way. It used to be 2-hour program
yeah,
with a break in between.
yeah. So we're all finished for this evening. All motions are made. So thank you, everyone. We do have a budget passed up committee of the whole, so it will go to council next. So our next meeting is back at our regular committee of the whole. June.
Next meeting is right after this.
Oh, yeah, but next committee of the whole is June 9th. We'll be back next week for our regular. But we're gonna go into a special council meeting now for the one motion that came out of the special committee of the whole. So can we just adjourn? We'll adjourn now and then we're gonna come back